The millionaire entered an arranged marriage, but froze when his ugly bride removed her mask. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night the arrangement was finalized, the Hale mansion glowed with warm golden lights, but Adrian Hale felt nothing warm at all. The grand hall buzzed with soft chatter, crystal glasses clinking, and the muted hum of a string quartet playing near the marble staircase. Adrian stood tall in his tailored charcoal suit, but his jaw was tight, his shoulders coiled, every muscle broadcasting the same message. He did not want to be here. Not like this. Not for this. His marriage, his entire future, had been compressed into a stack of legal documents and a 30-day deadline. If he did not marry now, the Hale board would strip him of 18% of his shares and hand the CEO seat to Victoria, the cousin who had waited years to watch him fall. And so tonight, he would meet his bride. His ugly bride, as Victoria had whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. Adrian didn't entertain gossip, but even he had caught the rumors. Mira Dalton, the daughter of a once prestigious family now drowning in debt. A reclusive girl who never appeared without a lace mask covering half her face. Some said she had scars, some claimed her skin had been burned, others said she was simply hideous. Adrian didn't care. Beauty had nothing to do with this. It was a contract, a shield, a way to survive the board's attack. He told himself that over and over as the double doors opened and Mira stepped inside. She was small, graceful, wrapped in a soft silver gown that shimmered under the chandelier. And yes, there it was, the mask. Black lace, delicate but concealing, curving over her cheekbone and covering the left half of her face. She walked with careful steps, clutching her hands together as if protecting something fragile inside herself. When she reached him, she lifted her chin just enough to show confidence she clearly didn't feel. "Mr. Hale," she said softly. Her voice surprised him. Warm, steady, polished. Adrian inclined his head. "Miss Dalton." For a moment, the world narrowed to the faint scent of lavender on her gown and the way her fingers trembled before she hid them behind her back. The Dalton family stood nearby, stiff and nervous. Her father cleared his throat and murmured. The children would like a moment to speak in private. Children? Adrian nearly scoffed. He was 32. But he gestured for Mira to follow him toward the side corridor that led to the Hale library, the quietest room in the house. As soon as the door clicked shut behind them, she exhaled shakily. "Before anything else," she said, voice trembling but determined, "I want you to know I'm not here to force myself into your life. I know this marriage is strategic. For both of us." Adrian studied her, the way she stood straight, even while fear flickered in her eyes. She continued, "I ask for only 3 things. We keep this marriage public for 1 year. We remain respectful partners, and you allow me to maintain my privacy." Her hand lifted subconsciously toward the mask. "Especially this." Adrian's gaze softened despite himself. "I won't ask you to remove it," he said simply. Something shifted in her posture, a tiny release of tension. She nodded once. "Then I agree to the arrangement." She extended her hand. Small, cold, determined. Adrian took it, feeling a strange, fleeting spark, something almost like recognition, though they had never met before. Or so he thought. Neither of them knew yet how wrong that assumption was. Because outside the library doors, Victoria Hale was already smiling, already planning, already preparing the moment that mask would come off. Not in private, not gently, but in front of the entire world. And when it finally happened, nothing in Adrian's carefully controlled life would ever be the same again. The library smelled faintly of old paper and cedar polish as Adrian and Mira stepped out after finalizing their agreement. Servants drifted like shadows across the hall, preparing the mansion for the announcement dinner. Everything looked perfect, but Adrian felt the thin crack of pressure behind his ribs widening. He reminded himself that this was temporary. 1 year. A clean contract. Nothing more. Still, he could not ignore how Mira's hand had trembled in his during the handshake. Now, as they walked side by side toward the dining hall, he noticed she kept a careful distance, as if afraid her shadow might inconvenience him. Her mask, delicate and dark, caught the warm chandelier light and shimmered like something fragile hiding a wound. The pressure in Adrian's chest tightened again, though he did not understand why. They sat at the long polished table across from their families. Conversations that should have been celebratory felt strangely strained. Mira barely touched her water. Adrian barely touched anything. Her father cleared his throat. Since the two of you have agreed, the contract will be signed formally tomorrow morning. For tonight, let us enjoy the moment. Mira lowered her eyes, maybe wishing she could disappear between the plates. Adrian straightened slightly. If this is what needs to be done, he said, I have no objections. But the words sounded colder than he intended, and Mira flinched just barely before covering it with a polite smile. After dinner, the two families retreated with their advisors to prepare the next steps, leaving Adrian and Mira alone again. The moment the doors clicked shut around them, silence expanded. Mira folded her hands. You should know, she said softly. My family was not always like this. My mother's illness drained everything. We lost our home, our standing, our reputation, and now we are trying to survive the consequences of mistakes we did not make. Adrian looked at her more carefully. And you agreed to this marriage because you needed the money for her treatment. Mira nodded once, her mask shifting slightly as she inhaled. I do not expect sympathy, only understanding. Her voice carried neither self-pity nor manipulation, only truth. Adrian respected that more than he expected to. You will have what you need, he said quietly. I keep my word. Her breath caught, like the idea of someone keeping a promise felt foreign. And you, she said carefully. You agreed because your board would remove you from your position otherwise. Adrian's jaw tightened. They believe I lack stability. A marriage, even one like this, will silence them. He met her eyes directly for the first time since dinner. This marriage is a strategic solution for both of us. That is all. Mira nodded, though something unreadable flickered behind her lashes. Yes, just a solution. But her whisper held a faint sorrow, the kind that does not belong in a contract conversation. Before he could analyze it, she straightened. There is one more thing you should know. The terms my family requested, the ones concerning the mask, they were not meant to deceive you. They were meant to protect me. Adrian frowned. Protect you from what? Mira hesitated, fingers grazing the edge of the lace. People can be cruel, Mr. Hale, especially when they believe they are entitled to judge what they do not understand. Her tone was gentle, but her posture was braced as if expecting him to recoil. He did not. Instead, he studied her mask with a thoughtful seriousness foreign to him. I do not need to see your face to honor a contract, he said finally. Her shoulders loosened, just barely. Thank you. They walked toward the grand stairs leading to their separate rooms, shadows stretching long across the marble floor. At the top of the staircase, Mira paused, her hand hovering above the railing. Tomorrow begins our official engagement, she said softly. I hope we can coexist peacefully. Adrian nodded. I believe we can. She offered him a small, fragile smile from behind the black lace. Good night, Mr. Hale. He watched her disappear down the hall, feeling the strange weight of a question he could not name. Something about the way she carried herself, quiet but unbroken, lingered with him long after she was gone. And though he would never admit it aloud, a thought flickered at the edge of his mind, one that should not have existed at all. What exactly was she hiding behind that mask? And why did he suddenly care? The next morning arrived with a pale winter light seeping through the curtains of the Hale mansion. Adrian was already awake, impeccably dressed in a slate suit as he reviewed the formal contract drafted overnight by both families' attorneys. The legal language felt heavy, clinical, as if every sentence pressed down on the reality he had not fully admitted yet. In a matter of days, Mira Dalton would become Mira Hale, his wife in name, but not in heart. Still, he reminded himself, it was necessary. At precisely 9 o'clock, Mira entered the study where the signing would take place. She wore a soft cream dress and the same lace mask that hid the left side of her face. The morning light framed her like she was a watercolor painting, delicate yet quietly resolute. She sat across from him, folding her hands neatly on the polished table. Good morning, Mr. Hale, she said, her tone polite but tinged with nerves. Mira, Adrian responded, giving a short nod. The attorneys began reviewing the clauses aloud, their voices filling the room with a steady cadence. Clause 1. The marriage shall last a minimum of 12 months before either party can request dissolution. Clause 2. Both parties agree to attend all public events as a unified couple. Clause 3. Personal privacy shall be respected. Miss Dalton retains the right to wear her facial covering in all settings. Mira's spine straightened slightly at that, and Adrian noticed. He wondered what pain or memory lay beneath that piece of lace. What made her guard it so fiercely? The attorneys continued. Clause 4. No physical intimacy is expected or required. Mira's fingers twitched. Adrian's jaw tightened. The room felt suddenly too still. Clause 5. The attorney concluded. Upon the successful completion of 1 year, both parties may decide to continue the marriage or mutually separate. The papers were placed in front of them with 2 pens. Adrian signed first, a single smooth stroke of resolve. He passed the pen across the table. Mira hesitated for barely a breath before signing her name with delicate precision. When she slid the document back, her hand brushed the table's edge and trembled. Not from fear, Adrian realized, but from the weight of everything she was giving up to save her family. When the attorneys exited, leaving the 2 of them alone, Adrian cleared his throat. There is a board meeting this afternoon, he said. It will be the first time we present ourselves officially. Mira nodded. I understand. You do not have to speak, he added, unsure why he felt the need to reassure her. Only stand with me. Mira let out a soft breath. Standing beside you is the least I can do. Her sincerity caught him off guard, far more than the contract had. Hours later, as they prepared to leave for the Hale corporate headquarters, a stylist arrived to assist Mira. Adrian caught a glimpse of her in the hallway, practicing her posture in front of a tall mirror. Her mask remained in place, but her expression suggested she was bracing herself for battle. When Adrian approached, she turned sharply, startled. I am sorry, she said. I did not hear you coming. You do not need to apologize, Adrian replied. His eyes lifted to hers in the mirror. Are you ready? She swallowed. I hope so. He offered his arm, more out of instinct than obligation. Mira stared at it for a moment before placing her hand lightly on his sleeve. The touch was feather soft, but something about it sent a strange jolt through him. As they stepped into the waiting car, camera flashes exploded outside the gates. The engagement had leaked. Voices shouted questions, snapping photos of the mysterious masked bride. Mira's grip on his arm tightened just enough for him to feel it. Ignore them, Adrian said quietly. Look ahead. She nodded, straightening her shoulders as the car pulled onto the main road. And for the first time, Adrian sensed an unexpected truth blooming inside him, subtle but undeniable. Mira Dalton might be entering this marriage for survival, but she carried herself with a kind of bravery he had rarely seen in anyone. He did not know it yet, but the world would soon test that bravery in ways neither of them imagined. The Hale corporate tower loomed against the sky like a shard of steel, its mirrored surface reflecting the winter sun as the car pulled up to the private entrance. Inside, executives and board members were already gathering, whispering about the unexpected engagement announcement flooding the news. Adrian stepped out first, composed and unreadable, then offered his hand to Mira as she emerged from the car. Her silver dress was elegant but understated, her lace mask glowing faintly under the lobby lights. Mira's grip was steady, though Adrian felt the faintest tremor in her fingers. Not fear. Bracing. The kind of tension carried by someone walking into a room, knowing she would be judged before she even spoke. As they entered the main lobby, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. A billionaire marrying a masked woman was the kind of scandal wealthy circles dissected for weeks. Mira felt every stare like a spotlight, yet she maintained perfect posture, her chin lifted with fragile dignity. Adrian noticed, and something in him shifted. He placed his hand gently on hers, a silent reassurance that caught her off guard but steadied her breath. They moved together toward the executive elevator, the tension in the room trailing behind them like a fog. Inside the private lift, Mira finally let out a small breath. They are trying to guess what happened to my face, she said softly. They want a story to gossip about. Adrian met her eyes. Let them gossip. They do not have the right to demand anything from you. Mira blinked, startled by the warmth in his voice. You do not even know what is beneath this mask, she said. And you do not ask. That is because it is yours, Adrian replied simply. The doors opened to the 38th floor where the board waited. Mira drew in a breath and stepped forward. Adrian kept pace beside her, projecting the confidence she hoped to borrow. The boardroom was enormous, lined with tall windows overlooking the entire city. Victoria Hale stood near the head of the table, a smile stretched too thin, too sweet, like a blade hidden in silk. Adrian, she said brightly, and this must be our new addition. Her eyes skimmed Mira with thinly veiled disdain. What an unusual choice. Mira froze for half a heartbeat, but Adrian's hand brushed lightly against her back, grounding her. This is my fiancé, he said, his tone colder than the glass table. Show her respect. Victoria's smile faltered for a moment before reforming. Of course, cousin. We simply did not expect such a mysterious bride. She emphasized the word mysterious, glancing pointedly at Mira's mask. Several board members exchanged whispers. Mira felt heat rise under her mask, but she held her ground. When Adrian introduced her formally, she bowed her head politely. Thank you for welcoming me, she said. I understand this union may be surprising, but I hope my conduct will earn your trust, not your suspicion. The simplicity of her words, the honesty of them, rippled through the room. A few members softened their expressions, surprised by her poise. Victoria, however, stiffened. The meeting began, and Adrian spent the next hour presenting quarterly updates and strategic plans, while Mira sat silently beside him. Yet she watched everything with quiet intelligence. During a tense moment involving a stalled project, Adrian paused, deep in thought. Mira leaned closer and whispered, if you reduce the marketing spend on that division and redirect it to product testing, you could recover the loss within the next quarter. Adrian turned to her, stunned. How do you know that? Mira blinked. My father used to run a consultancy. I helped him with projections before his health declined. Adrian relayed her suggestion to the board, who murmured in agreement. Victoria's expression tightened further. When the meeting ended, several members approached Mira, shaking her hand, thanking her for the insight. She responded with modest grace, but Adrian noticed how she trembled slightly afterward, overwhelmed but relieved. In the elevator ride down, she whispered, I hope I did not overstep. You did exactly the opposite, Adrian said. You impressed people who have not been impressed in years. Mira lowered her gaze, a shy warmth blooming in her voice. I only wanted to help. Adrian studied her profile, the lace mask, the earnestness in her tone. He realized he was beginning to see her not as the mysterious bride forced upon him, but as someone with unexpected strength and depth. As they exited the elevator, camera flashes burst again from behind the glass doors. Mira instinctively stepped back, but Adrian moved slightly in front of her, shielding her from the onslaught. She looked up at him, surprised. Why did you do that? Because, he said calmly, you are my fiancé. And for the first time, the word did not feel like a lie. The days following the board meeting moved quickly, filled with preparations for the official engagement gala, a high society event that Victoria insisted on hosting at the Hale mansion. Adrian knew she had ulterior motives, but refusing would only fuel more rumors. Mira approached the preparation days with quiet discipline, attending etiquette sessions, rehearsing introductions, and studying the guest list so she would not misstep. Adrian found himself observing her more often than he intended. There was something compelling about the way she tried, not to impress, but to avoid embarrassing him. Every time she practiced balancing a champagne flute or learned the subtle cues of upper circle conversation, she did it with the kind of resolve that came from a life of surviving judgment. One afternoon, the stylist arrived with a series of gowns for Mira to try. Adrian happened to walk past the open doorway, just as Mira stepped out in a soft gold dress, the fabric shimmering like morning sunlight. She adjusted the lace mask nervously. The stylist fussed over her posture while Mira held still, her hands trembling slightly. Adrian paused. That one, he said without thinking. Mira turned, startled. You think so? It suits you, he said, then added, it suits the event. She nodded, though her cheeks warmed beneath the mask. But later that night, as the house quieted, Adrian found Mira alone in the back garden, the winter air turning her breath into pale clouds. She stood by the stone fountain, her hands clasped tightly, her shoulders stiff with exhaustion. "Long day?" he asked gently. Mira looked up, startled again. "I was just getting some air." "You look overwhelmed," he said. Her laugh was soft, weary. "I am trying my best, but sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, they are waiting for me to fail." Adrian moved closer, but not too close. "People in our world judge quickly, Mira, but that does not mean they are right." She lowered her gaze. "It is different for me. They see the mask and assume the worst. They make up stories, some of them cruel. And I cannot correct them without exposing something I am not ready to show." Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. "You do not owe anyone the truth about what is under that mask." Mira hesitated, then whispered, "But it affects you too. You are marrying someone they call strange or flawed." Adrian's voice hardened. "Their opinion means nothing to me." She looked up at him, eyes shining with something fragile and grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. A long silence settled, broken only by the rustling of the winter branches. Then Adrian noticed her hands rubbing together, red from the cold. Without thinking, he shrugged off his coat and placed it around her shoulders. Mira inhaled sharply, stunned. "Adrian, I cannot. It is just a coat," he said. But she held it as if it was something much more. As they walked back inside, she kept glancing at him as though trying to decipher something unspoken. The next day arrived faster than either of them were ready for. The Hale mansion was transformed for the engagement gala, glowing with golden lights, floral arrangements, and towering banners. Guests from every elite circle in the country arrived in glittering waves of satin and diamonds. Mira stood near the staircase, her gold gown flowing perfectly, her mask catching the warm glow of the chandeliers. She held her composure, but Adrian could sense the tension in her breath. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Mira nodded, though she whispered, "I hope I make it through tonight without causing a scandal." "You will do more than that," Adrian said. "You will surprise them." They walked into the ballroom arm in arm. Conversations hushed. Heads turned. Mira had expected ridicule or whispers, but instead, the room seemed stunned. She carried herself with grace, her gown shimmering with every step. For a brief moment, the world saw her not as an oddity, but as someone striking, dignified, unforgettable. But as the evening unfolded, Victoria moved like a shadow along the edges of the crowd, her eyes calculating, waiting for a moment to strike. And that moment was coming far sooner than Adrian or Mira realized. The engagement gala swirled with music, crystal lights, and the soft hum of conversation. But beneath all the elegance lay tension that only Adrian and Mira could feel. Mira stayed close to him, her hand gently looped through his arm, her posture graceful even as her pulse fluttered beneath her skin. Guests approached with polite smiles, their eyes darting curiously to the lace mask. Some offered kind words, impressed by her poise. Others whispered behind jeweled fingers, their curiosity edged with cruelty. Adrian noticed every stare, every murmur, and found himself growing protective in ways he had not anticipated. When the orchestra shifted to a slower melody, Adrian offered his hand to Mira. "Would you like to dance?" She startled slightly. "I do not want to embarrass you if I misstep." "You will not," he said simply, and the certainty in his voice made her inhale softly. On the dance floor, she moved tentatively at first, her gloved hand resting lightly on his shoulder, her other hand in his. But as the music flowed, her movement smoothed, and she lifted her gaze to meet his. For a moment, the world around them softened. The crowd blurred. The chandelier light reflected in her eyes like stars. Adrian felt something shift, subtle but unmistakable, as if a door inside him unlatched. Mira sensed it too, because her breath hitched, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something fragile and new. But the moment shattered when Victoria appeared near the edge of the dance floor, her expression sharp as glass. She leaned toward a group of reporters, whispering something that made their eyes widen with predatory interest. Adrian tensed. Mira followed his gaze, her stomach twisting. "She is planning something," Mira whispered. "Stay close to me," Adrian said. But the warning came too late. As the music ended, a reporter stepped forward boldly. "Miss Dalton," he called out loudly, "there are rumors that you wear the mask because you are hiding a disfigurement. Is it true your fiancé has never seen your face?" The question cracked through the ballroom like a whip. Mira froze, her breath snatched away. Adrian stepped forward at once. The question is inappropriate. Back away. But another reporter pushed closer. Is your condition genetic? Will it affect future children? Mira flinched as if struck. Gasps rippled through the guests. Victoria watched from a distance, her smile thin and triumphant. Adrian's voice turned icy. Leave now. All of you. He shielded Mira with his body, his arm wrapping protectively around her. But the reporters did not retreat. One of them shouted, if there is nothing to hide, why the mask? What are you keeping from the public? Cameras flashed aggressively. The bright lights burned into Mira's eyes. Her hands shook. Her chest tightened. The mask suddenly felt too hot, too heavy, like it was sealing in all the air she needed. Adrian held her close. Mira breathed. Look at me, he murmured urgently. But she was spiraling, memories drowning her. Whispers from years past, children pointing, adults recoiling at the redness of her healed scars. She squeezed her eyes shut, her voice barely a whisper. I cannot do this. Adrian immediately guided her out of the ballroom, one hand at her back, the other shielding her from cameras. The crowd parted, murmuring. Some curious, some sympathetic, many cruel. In the corridor outside, away from the music and lights, Mira collapsed against the wall. She pressed a hand to her mask, her breaths coming too fast. I knew this would happen, she whispered. I knew they would try to tear me apart. Adrian knelt in front of her, his hands gentle on her arms. You did nothing wrong. They had no right. Tears filled her eyes, hidden by the mask. It feels like no matter what I do, I will always be the girl everyone whispers about. The strange one. The flawed one. Adrian's voice softened. You are not flawed. She shook her head. You do not know what is under this mask. I do not need to, he said. I see you. His words made her swallow hard, as if they reached a place inside her she had kept locked for years. But before she could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Victoria's voice, cold and falsely sweet, drifted toward them. My, she said, rounding the corner. It seems the mask is already causing trouble. Perhaps it would be easier if she just removed it. Mira stiffened. Adrian rose slowly, turning toward his cousin, his expression lethal. He had tolerated her schemes, her games, her ambition, but this was different. This was personal. Victoria, he said, his voice low enough to silence the air around them. If you take one more step toward her, you will regret it. And for the first time all night, Victoria hesitated. Victoria's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she stepped closer, the smug amusement on her face sharpening into something predatory. You cannot hide her forever, Adrian, she said, folding her arms. The public will demand transparency. Investors will ask questions. The board will want answers. A future Hale bride with a concealed face? Scandalous. Suspicious. Potentially dangerous. Her tone was dripping with false concern, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. Mira shrank slightly behind Adrian, her breathing still unsteady, her hand pressed protectively against the mask. Adrian moved half a step in front of her, blocking Victoria's view entirely. This conversation ends now, he warned. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You think protecting her will help you? It will not. You will lose credibility. The board already doubts your leadership. They think you are sentimental and easily manipulated. And now, you have chosen a bride the entire industry is questioning. When they turn against you, do not say, I did not warn you. Adrian's patience finally cracked. My leadership is not yours to question, he said, his voice low and razor sharp. And Mira is not yours to attack. She is under my protection. Under your protection, Victoria echoed mockingly. How poetic, but pointless. The world will not accept a woman who hides her face. And neither will the Hale legacy. Mira recoiled at the words, her fingers curling tightly. Adrian felt her tremble behind him. Something ancient and fierce surged in his chest. I will not let you humiliate her, he said. You already tried to destroy her tonight by unleashing those reporters. You orchestrated everything. Victoria did not even bother denying it. Someone had to show the truth, she replied. The mask is suspicious. It invites questions. It looks like deception. If she truly wants acceptance, she should remove it. Mira's breath caught painfully. Adrian's voice turned icy. She does not owe you, or anyone else here, her face. Victoria smiled, cruel and slow. Then she owes the world the fallout. Adrian stepped forward, his demeanor a dangerous calm. If you ever target her again, if you ever try to expose her, manipulate her, or weaponize her fears, you will lose everything you have clawed your way into. I will make sure of it. For the first time, Victoria's confident facade cracked. But she quickly narrowed her eyes. Careful, cousin, she hissed. Your little bride is becoming a weakness. Adrian did not blink. Or maybe she is becoming the one thing you will never be, someone worth defending. Victoria's lips tightened as she spun on her heel and stormed away. The moment she disappeared around the corner, Mira exhaled shakily, her knees nearly giving way. Adrian turned instantly, steadying her. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice gentle again. Mira shook her head. No, just overwhelmed. Her voice cracked with emotion she could not swallow. I did not mean to cause trouble for you. I did not know reporters would ask. Stop, Adrian said firmly. You did nothing wrong. They crossed the line. Not you. Mira clutched his sleeve, her voice trembling. She is right about one thing. People see the mask and make up their own story. And I cannot tell them the truth. Not yet. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the fear, the shame, the exhaustion she had hidden so carefully. Then tell me, he said quietly. If not them, tell me what you are afraid of. Mira froze, her breath held tight in her chest. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the gala behind the closed doors. Then she whispered, I am afraid that if you see what I am hiding, you will look at me the same way they do. The honesty hit him harder than he expected. Adrian lifted her chin gently with 2 fingers, guiding her gaze up to his. I will never look at you the way they do, he said, because they only see what they want to judge. I see everything you are trying so hard to protect. Mira blinked back tears, her voice barely audible. I'm not as strong as you think. You are stronger than you know, Adrian answered. Tonight proved that. She leaned against him, just slightly, enough for him to feel the warmth of her trust through the fabric of her gown. He wrapped an arm around her, steady but careful, as if holding something precious. Then from inside the ballroom, a sharp crash echoed, followed by gasps. A woman screamed. Adrian stiffened. Mira's head snapped up. Something had gone terribly wrong. And deep down, both of them already knew, Victoria was not finished. The sharp crash from the ballroom sent a ripple of panic through the corridor, and Adrian immediately guided Mira behind him as they hurried toward the noise. When they entered the ballroom, guests were gathered in a tense circle near the center. A shattered crystal centerpiece lay on the floor, and beside it, scattered like planted evidence, was a stack of old photographs. No, not photographs. Medical records. Hospital documents. Images of a young girl with severe facial burns and bandages covering half her face. Mira's breath hitched so violently she choked on it. Her hand flew to her mask as her knees buckled. Adrian caught her instantly, fury tightening every muscle in his body. Victoria stood near the broken centerpiece, pretending to console a shocked guest, but her eyes gleamed with poisonous triumph. Oh dear, she said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. It seems someone uncovered Mira's past. Mira shook her head frantically, whispering, No, 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 as tears blurred her vision. Whispers spread like wildfire. Was this her? Is that why she hides her face? How could Adrian marry someone like that? The cruelty of the comments sliced deeper than the mask itself. Mira felt herself shrinking, folding inward, wishing she could disappear. Adrian stepped forward, planted himself between her and the growing crowd, and snapped. Everyone stay back. But Victoria stepped forward with a sympathetic pout. Adrian, the guests deserve to know the truth. Your fiancé is hiding something significant, something the public might consider dishonest. Her gaze traveled to the scattered photos. After all, love should not be built on lies, should it? Mira's tears fell freely now. She wanted to run, to hide, to rip the world away from herself. But Adrian turned. To her, his voice firm but gentle. Mira, look at me. She shook her head violently. I cannot. Not like this. Not in front of all these people. Then look at me, he repeated, his voice grounding her. Only me. She forced her tear-filled eyes to meet his. Adrian, please, she whispered, humiliated and trembling. Do not make me show them what I used to be. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing the edge of her mask. I am not asking you to show them, he said softly. I am asking you to let me stand with you. Behind them, Victoria laughed faintly. Stand with her all you want, Adrian, but everyone sees what she really is now. A scarred, damaged girl who tricked her way into the Hale family. Mira flinched. Adrian's voice dropped to a deadly calm. She tricked no one. You planted those documents. You invaded her privacy. And you weaponized her trauma. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria tried to recover. I simply revealed what she hid. You exposed medical records of a child, Adrian snapped. You orchestrated this cruelty. And it ends tonight. He turned to the stunned crowd, his voice rising. Everyone here seems so interested in her mask. So let me make something very clear. He reached for Mira's trembling hands and held them. Yes, she was injured as a child. Yes, she has scars. And yes, she wears the mask because the world can be cruel, as you all just proved. Mira's breath broke. She had never heard anyone defend her like this. But what none of you seem to understand, Adrian continued, is that her scars do not diminish her. They reveal her strength. Victoria scoffed. Strength? She is terrified to show her face. Adrian turned slowly, eyes burning. If you went through what she did and still carried yourself with the dignity she has, you would understand strength. He looked back at Mira, his voice softening. You do not have to hide from me. Her voice trembled. I am scared. I know, he said gently. But you are not alone. Not anymore. Then, slowly, Mira lifted her hand to the ribbon behind her ear. Her entire body trembled, but her eyes never left Adrian's. Are you sure? She whispered. I will be right here, he said. With a shaking breath, Mira loosened the ribbon. The mask slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. A collective gasp surged through the ballroom. The left side of her face bore faint scars, soft, healed lines, not disfiguring, not grotesque, simply the remnants of a childhood accident. Mira squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for rejection. But silence fell. Then Adrian lifted his hand, touched her cheek with reverence, and whispered softly enough for only her to hear. You are beautiful. Mira broke, a sob escaping her lips, but it was not from shame this time. It was from relief. Adrian turned to the crowd, voice steady. This is Mira Hale. And if anyone here cannot see her worth, that says more about them than it ever will about her. Victoria, realizing the tide had turned, backed away, her face pale with fury. But Adrian was not finished. And as for the person who violated her privacy and tried to humiliate her, he said, locking eyes with Victoria, her actions will be addressed legally. The room erupted in murmurs. Victoria blanched. Mira leaned into Adrian, her tears soaking his jacket, but this time she felt held, protected, seen, truly seen. And for the first time, without the mask, she did not feel broken at all. In the hours that followed Mira's unmasking, the ballroom transformed from a storm of whispers into a space filled with stunned silence and reluctant respect. Some guests avoided meeting her eyes, ashamed of their earlier judgments. Others approached Adrian quietly to express support, sensing that the tide of power in the Hale family had shifted in ways Victoria never anticipated. Mira stayed close to Adrian, her fingers intertwined with his, her breath steadier now that the world had seen her truth, and she was still standing. Adrian guided her gently toward a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The winter air brushed her skin, cool against the faint warmth of her healed scars. She looked down at the mask in her hand, the lace now feeling like an old ghost she no longer needed to fear. I did not think I would survive tonight, she said softly, her voice fragile but honest. Adrian turned to face her, his expression full of something deeper than sympathy. You did more than survive, he said. You showed them the strength I have seen in you from the beginning. Mira brushed a tear from her cheek. I did not know you saw anything in me at all. He exhaled, as if letting go of something he had been holding for far too long. Mira, somewhere along the way, protecting you stopped feeling like an obligation and started feeling like the most important thing in my life. Her breath caught, her eyes widening slightly. Adrian. But he was not finished. When you removed the mask tonight, I felt something I have never felt before. Not because of how you looked, but because you trusted me enough to show me who you are. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. I trusted you because you were the only one who did not treat me like I was something to fear or hide. He stepped closer, his hand lifting to gently touch her cheek where the faint lines of old scars traced her skin like delicate brushstrokes. These do not change anything, he said. If anything, they tell me you have lived through something painful and came out stronger. Mira inhaled shakily as he continued. I do not want this marriage to be a contract anymore. Her heart pounded. Adrian. He reached into his jacket, pulling out the very contract they had signed days ago. The crisp pages rustled in the cold breeze. This, he said quietly, was built on fear and necessity. But what I want with you now is built on trust and choice. Without breaking eye contact, he tore the contract cleanly in half. Mira gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Adrian, you cannot just. I can, he said gently. Because this marriage should not be something we endure. It should be something we choose. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears shimmered with something warm, something hopeful. And what do you choose? She whispered. He cupped her cheek with both hands, his forehead resting against hers. I choose you. Not the version behind the mask. Not the version the world speculated about. I choose the woman standing in front of me right now. Mira's breath trembled as she whispered, Then I choose you too. The words slipped out like a promise she had been waiting her whole life to speak. Adrian let out a soft, relieved laugh as he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious that fate had returned to him. Behind them, the ballroom doors opened, and several board members approached. One of the elders cleared his throat and said, Mr. Hale, we would like to apologize to Miss Dalton for the way she was treated. Her composure tonight showed a strength worthy of the Hale name. Mira bowed her head respectfully, but Adrian answered first. Her name, he said firmly, is Mira Hale, and she has earned it. The elder nodded, visibly impressed. As they walked away, Mira turned to Adrian, her voice soft with disbelief. You meant that? He smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Every word. Days later, in a small private ceremony held in the garden where she once stood trembling under the weight of expectation, Mira walked toward Adrian wearing a simple gown. No mask, no fear, nothing to hide. When they exchanged vows, his voice was steady. The day you removed the mask, he said, I realized I was the one hiding. You taught me what it means to be brave. Mira placed her hand over his heart. And you showed me what it feels like to be seen. They kissed as winter sunlight filtered through the trees. And in that moment, the arranged marriage that had begun as a contract became the love story neither of them had expected. In the weeks that followed, the world spoke of the mysterious bride with the scarred past, but what they said mattered little. Because Adrian and Mira had already written the only truth that mattered. Love built on dignity, trust, and courage is stronger than any mask. And their story was just beginning.